Invention is one of the great marks of genius. But if we consult experience, we should find that it is by being conversant with the inventions of others that we learn to invent. As by reading the thoughts of others, we learn to think. Their inventions are not only food for our infancy, but the substance which supplies the fullest maturity of our vigor. Creative writing is about invention. You are going to be inventing a story, inventing a poem, or inventing a play. And so to invent, you will need to what? Consult what others have done. You learn to think by reading others' thoughts. That's what you do in school. The books you read are people's thoughts. And as you are reading them, you are learning to think. In the same way you learn to invent by exploring what others have invented. Creativity springs from knowing literary traditions that have been, that are entrained, and are learning to create new traditions from the old. And so we will look at some other quotations. This first one is from T.S. Eliot, taken from his book, Tradition and the Individual Talents. Tradition is a matter of much wider significance. It cannot be inherited. And if you want it, you must obtain it by great labor. It involves a perception, not only of the pastness of the past, but of its presence. The historical sense compels a man to write not merely with his own generation in his bones, but with a feeling that the whole of the literature of Europe from Homer, and within it the whole of the literature of his own country, has a simultaneous existence and composes a simultaneous order. This historical sense is what makes a writer traditional, and it is at the same time what makes a writer most accurately conscious of his place in time, of his contemporaneity. No poet, no artist of any art has his complete meaning alone. His significance, his appreciation, is the appreciation of his relation to the dead poets and artists. You cannot value him alone. You must set in for contrast and comparison among the dead. This is the reason why I love the movie, The Dead Poets Society, where Robin Williams played a major role. In that movie, the students are in the poetry class, and Robin Williams is the teacher, the lecturer. And the first thing he told them is, poetry is the poems, not what people have said about the poems. And so he told them to bring out their text. They brought it out. He looked at their text and he told them to tear the first page off their own books. He tore it. And he said, tear the second page, tear the third, tear the fourth. And they kept tearing until he got to the poem. And he said, yes, you can stop. This is what we mean, the poem, not what has been said about it. And so you need to understand what others have done before you. Shakespeare is dead, but what can you learn from Shakespeare? Homer is dead. What can you learn from Homer? Milton is dead. What can you learn from Milton? Charles Dickens is dead. What can you learn from Charles Dickens? We can learn from the dead. And learning from the dead will help us become better than we are. It is only the child that does not listen to counsel that gets buried with the dead. That's a proverb. Meaning, if you do not know what has killed someone and you do the same thing that killed that person, I didn't say it. He said it. So we take the second essence. When was the last time you saw poetry holding a passport and queuing in front of an immigration desk? Is poetry a citizen of the world or a citizen of nowhere, or both? If a poem is never a lone wolf, what's stopping us from making associations between widely different poems, say Claudia Rankin's Citizen, an American lyric, and Wordsworth and Coleridge lyrical ballads, or Alice Oswald's That, and Lipo's collected poems. In the first week of Introduction to Poetry 1, a mandatory undergraduate module I took at the Chinese University of Hong Kong, a Canadian professor gave us a handout with a fragment of Sappho, a few verses from the book of Job, a Shakespeare sonnet, a stanza from Wordsworth, I Wander Lonely as a Cloud, the opening of T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, and an unpunctuated paragraph from Gertrude Stein, and some lines from Allen Ginsberg and Leonard Cohen. What is the poetic canon? A question deafening the already quiet classroom. I saw artillery, smelled powder, and held the loading of cannonballs. The first cannon I had encountered was a school trip to a museum. It was a fine British specimen, purportedly kept from the Second Opium War. Some boys from my class started giggling and making mischievous poses in front of the larger-than-life phallic symbol. Whenever the word tradition rings in my ear, I imagine a poetry canon behind some top-grade, non-reflective museum glass, pointing at the reader. Is it a threat or defense? How can such a seemingly decommissioned idea as a canon feel so unnervingly alive? It is taken from Thoughts on Tradition and Nation by Kit Fan. The question is, what is tradition? What's a canon? In literature, we talk about canon. A canon is actually a work that has been accepted. And how do you know that a work has been accepted by the world? It's because a lot of critics have worked on that work. They've read it, they've interpreted it. It's been interpreted again and again and again and again, and so it becomes a part of the canon. If a work is not interpreted or reinterpreted and is not accepted by the world, it is not a part of the canon. And when it becomes a part of the canon, it defines a tradition, meaning it has set forth a set of rules that can be followed or obeyed to achieve something new. That's what the canon is. That's what the tradition is. And so, you will learn from traditions that have been set forth by others. If you want to set forth a new tradition, you must understand the tradition of the old works and not museum pieces. I love Shakespeare. Read Julius Caesar. Read Romeo and Juliet. Read A Midsummer Night's Dream. Read 12 Nights. You will see lines, beautiful lines, lines that will make you think. If I love how you're looking for words to use, go to Romeo and Juliet. You will find enough. And when she hears them, her head will stand. And she will say yes before you say no. That's words. You want the songs on nature? Go to William Wordsworth. Table Turned, I Wander Lonely as a Cloud. I love Wordsworth. I've read him. I continue to enjoy him. What about John Donne? But to my heart, three-person God. I love Donne too. I have read Charles Dickens, Tale of Two Cities, Oliver Twist. I love Dickens. What about Thomas Hardy? Hard Times, the mayor of Casterbridge. In our time, we have new traditions. Chinua Achebe has created a tradition. Things fall apart. Arrow of God, the man of the people. And Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie is following in Achebe's tradition. And she has created, recently, Dream Counts. In the past, Americana, Purple Hibiscus, Half of a Yellow Sun. These are texts that when you read them, they should inspire you. In creative writing, we are not reading to interpret. We are reading to create. The only way you can create is by mimicry. Meaning, you look at someone's work, try to copy it, and change some things. As you are doing that copying, you are learning to create your own. You learn by watching, by reading. You practice by copying. The third essence. The creative text does in fact deal with religious and philosophical questions, but in its own specific way and with its own manner of expression. It reveals point of view and opinions which upset the systems of both the religious and the philosophical approach. Unlike the philosophical and religious texts, it has nothing to do with what has already been taught, either in terms of the experience it portrays or the discovery it makes. On the contrary, it enters areas of thought which have not been entered before, which are suppressed or remain hidden and remote. It reveals truth by a method which employs neither belief nor rational argumentation, a method which offers a knowledge of the thing itself. So what we're trying to say here is this. If you're going to be a writer, you must have your own ideology. Your ideology must be different. Your ideology should drive your work. Shakespeare had his ideology. Achebe had his ideology. Achebe's ideology was that if the story of hunting is always told by the hunter, you will never get to hear the part of the hunter. What he meant by that was the stories we heard were by Europeans. Europeans have written about Africa, and they wrote about Africa from their own perspective, and they painted Africa in dark lights. They said you were monkeys. They said you live in trees. They said you are beasts, that you are barbaric. They described you in such a way that you are non-humans. You are objects. Achebe said, no. Let them know that we have a culture. We have our own tradition. We have our own laws. We have our own way of doing things. Their way of doing things is not superior to our way of doing things. And so we need to tell our own story. If you ask someone to tell your story for you, you will not get the right story. The best person to tell your story is you. Creative writing is the product of imaginative thinking. Creative writing can also be called imaginative writing. Imaginative writing is a piece of writing that requires the ability to bring into being that which has not been in existence, to explore your mind and create a new life. God is the first creator.